CG like that. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? The Carlton gods must be crazy.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Bluebaggers Edge, and of course another review coming off the back of what ended up being a 14-point loss to Port Adelaide. Hard to swallow. 9-11-65 to Port 11-13-79. What can we say? Well, fresh from returning from the game. Had a little bit of time to, I guess, swallow what I've seen. Stew on it a bit. And there's a few things I've noted down. A few things I want to discuss. I guess we can probably just summarise it by saying, it's the same issues, different week. Exposed in the midfield, once again, for the lack of defensive pressure, which has been a common trend for, 3-4 weeks now. And again, we faced yet another team who had their backs against the wall and needed a win in order to stay in touch with the top 8. The losses that we've had in recent times, the Giants, Dogs, and now Port, all teams with backs against the wall, needed to win, had the hunger to win, and we didn't. So, is it a lack of hunger? Is that our main issue? Is it personnel? Or is it to do with the coaching and structure? Team selection, potentially another thing. So we'll, of course, discuss all that. I will say that obviously missing TDK, Harry, who obviously was a late out, and Akers, who wasn't fit to take his place, that hurt us, obviously. But I think the main issue is that by and large we've got the personnel in the park. We regained Gov, which was a big piece of our defence that we struggled with last week against North. But I think by and large we're just not adapting. And I think really that the teams have worked us out. And having said that, I hate to say it, but it awfully looks and feels like we're in the early part of 2023. Just with the way that we're playing and our structural setup. So I guess it's probably a good segue to have a chat about the game plan. I know we're coming off a 5-day break, and there are going to be some sore bodies as we saw last week against North. Obviously Walshy came off a few times holding his back, and it's obvious that he is struggling with that back issue. There's no doubt about it. Sam Durden got injured, probably should have been subbed in the second quarter, but due to the lack of defensive personnel against North, he to his credit, played out the game. We had Kennedy, who was sore as well. And just, there were a few guys that were battered and bruised. And a 5-day break isn't ideal for any team. And you can't use that, having said it, as an excuse. But it's worth mentioning, nonetheless. Because I think it ties in with the game plan and the setup itself. And it's obvious that the way that Voss and Co have us playing is very breakneck speed, running up and back, expectation at both ends of the ground, both the forward line and defence, to push up to the opposite end, to apply pressure at all stages of the game, across 4 quarters. And I just think off a 5-day break, with the Voss and Co expecting, virtually the same team, bar maybe the 3 players that were different, to execute that back-breaking 2-way running with our entire forward line. As I said, the expectation for them to flood back to defence, and then obviously on the, conversely as well, our defence pushing forward and then back on turnover, which it just didn't work. And you could see, I think it was kind of underlined by, I think it was Hewitt's kick late in the final quarter, where he was kind of on the edge of the centre square and tried to kick it. He tried to hit up a bit of a kick on the 50 arc, and it was almost looked as though he stubbed his toe, but he didn't. He just didn't hit the kick, and it was tied legs, and we just ran out of puff, really. And not taking anything away from Port, because they were deserving of the win, 100%, no doubt about it. But I think to give us the best chance of winning, I think even if we were in the game up until the fourth quarter, and obviously we only kicked a 1 goal in the second half, despite scoring 7 goals in the second quarter, and we'll go through the stats very shortly. I think we didn't put ourselves in the best position to win the game. I think, have we gone back into our shells? I guess the players themselves, but the way that we structure up as well. It's awfully safe. It's avoid the corridor at all costs and hug the boundary line at all costs. So we'll start with the forward setup. So the first quarter, we had it perfect, I reckon. We had the ball in the string. I think it was McGovern hitting up Charlie on the lead early on. Incredible. Hit him on the tit, lace out. And then again, did it again. Charles converting goals. And I was amazed. I was like, where has this been in recent weeks where we've used Charlie to his strength, speed off the mark, leading into space, and hitting him up on the lead. Not just bombing it into the forward 50 aimlessly and expecting him to mark it overhead when he's being double teamed. In a forward line that is completely flooded with the opposition. So it started out perfectly. But thereafter, it was non-existent. We again resorted to bombing it in aimlessly, and virtually played to the strengths of Aaliyah. Aaliyah, we all know he's got an awesome jump, awesome spring, and he's an incredible mark. And teams really, just to put it bluntly, have worked us out for 4 weeks running, and I think, even last week, if we had played a team other than North, if we played Port last week with the same style of the game that we had last week, we would have been beaten. For that, I'm sure. And I mentioned it in the review that I was awfully worried about the way that we played. And I think we were saved. And like last week was a great opportunity for a tune-up. Great opportunity to work on those deficiencies. Like a defence, like a pressure. Forward 50 entries. And it looked as though, as I said, like the first moments of this game where it looked as though we'd worked on those deficiencies in our game. And then we just reverted back to the way that we've been playing. And teams have worked us out, and Port worked us out again. They just know that if they flood our forward line, that, block up space and block up leading patterns. So block up, space for leading patterns. And they just know that we'll panic. And our only resort is just bombing it in onto the head of Charlie. And without Harry there, we were just all at sea. All at sea. We just cannot persist with kicking it high onto the head of Charlie. He's not a power forward. He's not Harry, who thrives off that. He loves that overhead. That's his one wood. That's his strength. But, as I said earlier, Charlie's got that speed off the mark to exploit his opponent. Take those chest marks. Lace him out. Lace him out as we did in the opening moments of this game. So why didn't we persist with it throughout the rest of the game? Just plain and simply, we're just absolutely cooked. I don't know, is it the case of we deviated from our bombing in game plan and Vossi and co spoke to them at quarter time? Or what are you doing? Why are you hitting up Charlie on the lead? You should be bombing it in. It just absolutely makes no sense. And I totally understand that there would obviously be an element of, it's due to the pressure of the opposition, and credit to them for doing that, putting the pressure on us, not allowing us the time and space to hit up targets like Charlie on the lead. But it was a combination of things. It was a combination of those leads disappeared. Those opportunities for us to have the ball in our hand, look for different options. It was literally just bombing in aimlessly. Dummy leads. Where are the dummy leads? That's one thing that's really been non-existent for most of this season, really. Apart from, I guess those wins that we had, the 5-game streak. Apart from that, we've really seen none of that. Because a lot of the time we've used Harry as sort of that high half forward, pushing up to the wing. And we've used Charlie as that stay-at-home forward, as if he is a power forward. And, at times it's worked. We've been lucky. Other times, most of the time, it hasn't worked. But the tactic of using dummy leads, like I know that's part of the reason as well that, as I said, oppositions have worked this out, I think, and the Giants did it, the Dogs did it, Port have done it now, where they've flooded our forward line with virtually obviously their defence, but their midfield, their forward line even, and know that if they block up space, there are no leading patterns. But what happened to dummy leads? Virtually, have one man lead out an opposite direction to Charlie. Allow the space for Charlie to run into, to lead into, draw the man. Make the defenders accountable, the opposition defenders accountable. If there's two playing on Charlie, one of those should be made accountable. Use another player, run in the opposite direction, offer a dummy lead. Like, there's so many things that we just haven't tried, and we haven't seen, and it's just we just persist. We just persist with the old, we'll bomb it in and we'll kick and hope. We'll pray to the gods, the footy gods, that it works out for us, and it just hasn't. And it's awfully frustrating. Awfully frustrating. Coming out of defence. Now that was something that I think was probably the most concerning of the lot. And it's been a running trend now as well over the past 3 to 4 weeks, where our setup from transitioning the ball out of defence, we are so one-dimensional, so one-dimensional and so predictable. Hugging the wing all the way to goal, it just does not work. Long down the line, contest, to a contest time after time, predictable. And it's akin virtually to the early 2023 game plan, where we were almost avoiding the corridor at all costs, and we'd hug the wing. Whether it be McGovern taking the kick out, he would hit up, whether it be Sard or Kemp, whoever in the pocket, and then the expectation there is to, okay, everyone's stagnant, there's no leads, let's just bomb it down the line to the wing, to a contest. And it just wasn't working. And it was, it's one of those things where I think to myself, like, what's happened to playing to our strengths? Like, we have the weapons, in defence especially, like, Boyd's foot skills, which is something I'll speak about as well, just ever so briefly. He wasn't playing. Why not? He was fit, obviously. He was named emergency. We'll speak about it in a bit more depth a bit later, but Adam Sard. We all know and love his run and dash, his ability to break the lines, all that sort of stuff. Where has that been? Even when Zachy Williams has pushed forward, my expectation was to see more of that run and dash from Sardi. It's as if the directive is that Sard, once you've got the ball, doesn't matter, kick it down the line. Hit up a teammate 15 metres across from you. But by all means, do not take the corridor. In fact, don't even run through and break any lines whatsoever. It's like the directive is just to kick to the pocket and then smash it down the line to a massive contest and hope that we win in a 50-50 contest. And of course, Hinkley tonight, as I record this, as a game night, he'd seen us do that a few times and obviously would have studied the tape of our previous games and seen this as a pattern in our game style coming out of defence. And they just know that, okay, we'll just block up space in the wing. And if we don't get the mark, there'll be players around the fall of the ball that we know there'll be players corridor side, get the ball, if it's smashed down, pick it up, Butters, Rosie, whoever, handball it out to someone that's free. They know that someone's going to be there in the corridor because we don't guard the space in the corridor because we don't touch the corridor. And then from there, they just transition and it just puts pressure on the defence in having to do that. And Hinkley just knew that, us hugging the wings, Aaliyah, camp him there, he'll be there, drift across, take an easy intercept mark. And as I said, if he doesn't mark it, or if Zerk Thatcher, of all players, doesn't mark it, hits the ground, they'll transition it out and put us under pressure again because our defence has to almost, push back because once we've kicked the ball, we're trying to push forward to provide a bit of pressure to Port's players. And, puts our defence under pressure because it's just slingshotted back. And revisiting the chat about Boyd, why was it fit Boyd named as emergency, and we've persisted with Chera in the defensive role that he struggled to adapt to last week? Like, is it selection stubbornness? Has Boyd done something wrong? It made absolutely no sense. Why are we experimenting? I think is more the concerning thing. Why are we experimenting at this stage of the season when we need to consolidate our top 2 spot? Secure a home final. It's just so perplexing. It makes absolutely no sense. And again, Cherry didn't play well in that role. He's got no experience. Like, this is the sort of stuff that you don't introduce in season. Like, you practice for this over the preseason. You have a player, given time to, train alongside the defensive unit. If you're going to transition him into defense, to work with their style of play, you don't experiment that with a player like Chero, who provides such silky foot skills on a time and space in the midfield. Take out that advantage that we've got with him in the midfield, plug him in defence where he doesn't have any strengths whatsoever, and then, I guess, heap on deficiencies off the back of that, and keep out Jordan Boyd, who arguably is one of our better users of the footy in defence. And I know he had an off game the other week, but arguably he was injured, didn't play last week, obviously, and is emergency. So what's the reasoning behind it? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And I point the finger at the coaching staff and selection committee. What are you doing? It's just so perplexing. So perplexing. So the structure set up, the selection, it's just, there's so many question marks at this stage of the year. It's not good. It is not good at all. The setup in the midfield, again, like, it's, we got done like a dinner in clearances again. Our lack of pressure and defensiveness, just wasn't there. And it almost felt as if that we thought it would just happen. It would just click without putting in the work. And there were so many times as well, like going back to when we were kicking out of defence, that we weren't like, and we're kicking it long as well. That's the thing. Like, we weren't on the right side of our opponent. Like, we were virtually still their goal side, and they knew that we were going to kick long, so they ran back as fast as they could to take the mark if there wasn't like a genuine contest there. There was just a lack of structure. It was interesting, and it was not in a good way. I know people had suggested as well, I've seen this on Twitter, that Kemp could have played potentially forward, and I agree. It was a big ask, I think, for Young to come in and fill the shoes of Harry. Mind you, I think he actually did some pretty good things. Took some nice grabs, kicked a nice goal, obviously. But why weren't we using him as a stay-at-home forward? We were virtually using Charlie early on, especially, in a bit of a hybrid role, like Harry's role, where he was high half forward, pushing up to the wing. But then, what of that? Like, Charlie's not in the forward line, and a lot of the time Young wasn't. Like, he was pushing up the ground as well. And I'm like, what are we doing? And even center bounce stoppages as well, even around the ground, that we had Kennedy when Charlie was resting on the bench and Young was in the ruck, for example, because Pitt was resting on the bench. And we had Kennedy as like our full forward. And mind you, Kennedy played a really good game, I thought. He's our Mr. Fix-It. But he was undersized. Like, he was playing on a Lear at one stage and giving up a whole heap of height. And it just made no sense. But yeah, Kemp could have been thrown forward. Like, we know that he's got that string in his bow. Young does as well, but probably not as much. But I just think we should have tried something. And that's probably one thing that we could have tried. Because our 450 entries, again, we're not working at all. Ollie Hollands, I don't like to pick out specific players, but it's probably been culminating off 3, maybe 4 weeks now, where I think it looks as though he needs a spell in the seconds. I'm a big fan of Ollie, but his ball use was completely off, and it has been in recent weeks as well. And I think that the big highlight of this was, I think it was the third quarter, potentially maybe in the fourth, and it was right near where I sit at Marvel in my reserve seat with fellow baggers and stuff, and it was kicked down the line, and Cripper gathered the ball, gave it to Ollie, and then Ollie tried a 1-2 handball. So Cripper handballed to Ollie. Ollie should have had the awareness to see Cripper before he actually handballed, to see that Cripper was already under pressure, but still persisted with the handball. Cripps went down, was tackled, and was holding the ball. And that would have potentially, if he just held off handball into Cripper and just kicked, looked up and looked for an option inside 50, it would have provided us, a bit of an opportunity for scoring. But yeah, that kind of just was just underlined to me that Ollie's a little bit off. And it's, second year blues, and it happens a lot, as we know, across the league. But, I think that considering that Vossi gave Kemp a stint the seconds to regain form, I think, Ollie does deserve a bit of a readjustment. Head back to the VFL and, work on a couple of things. Regains some, I think he's fit, but I just think at times there are players that, especially, early in your career, you need a chance to go back and work on a few things and, come back when you've regained some form. And I just think he's definitely one of them. But he's not alone. Like, there's Cottrell, there's other players as well. So there's no use highlighting every single one of them. I think as a collective across the board, we need to be better. We need to dig in deep and, especially as I've been saying, like against these teams with backs against the wall, we're virtually in their position now. Like we've got our own backs against the wall. We've almost squandered our top 2 spot, which we probably will after results, come to light after this weekend. But it's seriously like danger territory at the moment. Obviously next week we face, unfortunately, our arch rivals in arch nemesis in the Pies. And, again, it's another team with their backs against the wall. They've lost some games that they should have been expected to win. A big loss to Hawthorn. See how they respond against Richmond. But either way, they've got to respond, and they're under pressure as the reigning premiers to do so. And, we've lost 3 now with, the Giants, Dogs, and now Port, with, all these teams with backs against the wall. And we're in their position now. We need to adjust and respond. Game plan. More risk, more dare. Use the corridor like we did when we adjusted the game plan from earlier in the 2023 season to later in the season, when we went on that winning streak, when we turned our season around and actually qualified for a final spot against all odds. We need to go back to the well there. And I'm pleading with the coaching staff to do this. Make some adjustments. Bring back Jordan Boyd. Hopefully Akers is fit enough to take his spot next week, because we definitely need players like him with his leg speed. He's two-way running, everything else. Put Shearer back into the middle. Bring Boyd back in. As I said, utilise that corridor. We've got to do that. We've got to do it, because we're falling back into that same old habit of last year where hug the wings and opportunities to goal is like kicking out wide to the pocket, where that's the only space that isn't guarded, because the opposition doesn't care if we lead into that space, because the percentage of conversion from that difficult spot is quite low. Hence the reason why early last season we weren't kicking as many goals, and we had quite a few behinds compared to goals, and that was the reason. And we've fallen back to that old style. So we need to fix that up. Pressure across the board, midfield pressure, everything else. It's probably a good time as well. I mean, it is the back end of this video, but let's go through some quick stats just to underline what we're talking about. So the breakdown of the quarter by quarter, as you can see there, 1 goal 4 to Port, 2 goals 2. Second quarter, we came out and scored 7 goals 2 to Port Adelaide, 2 goals 3 in the second quarter for them. Third quarter is where they did most of the damage, and we just went into our shells. We kicked 1-goal 2, and they kicked 3-5. And then to round out the other game, we kicked 3 behinds to their 5-3. So, 4-3, I should say. But just not good enough, really. Just not good enough. And as you can see here, like in terms of the discrepancy and being exposed in the midfield, exposed, dominated in the stoppages. Port scored 5-8. We kicked 2-3. They won the clearances, 42-33. Let's have a look at the breakdown of stats. So Port obviously had a few more disposals, as you can see there. Actually had 26 more. Inside 50s, 45-56. So they had an extra 11 inside 50s. Scoring opportunities, they ended up having 24 scoring shots to our 20. So they had an extra 4 scoring shots, but yet they had 11 more inside 50s. So defensively, I think we did pretty well in stopping, scoring from inside 50s. Again, just speaking to stoppages, 38 hit-outs to 50. Sweet, to his credit, did well. Clearances, 33-43. They had an extra 10. Setting clearances, 6-13. We were, below half of our season average to date, which is 13.7. And Port were bang on 13. Contested possessions, we ended up having 15 more. Uncontested possessions, though, they ended up having 23 more than us. So just does highlight the, lack of pressure around the ground to allow them to have those uncontested possessions just isn't good enough. For the match possession-wise, 44% to 38. Last quarter was 54% to 32%. Marks, which is something that we've been struggling with in recent weeks. We conceded 11 more. Marks inside 50 is another big one as well. They ended up having 4 more than us. And I reckon, again, probably a quarter, if not a third of these were in the first quarter, I reckon, for us. Those 9, probably about a 3 or 4. Most of those were probably Charlie. Contested marks, we had 12 to 13. Scoring, went through that already. Defensively, again, lack of pressure, lack of, hunt. 73 tackles to 91. Just not good enough. 18 more tackles for them. This is a big one as well. Tackles inside 50, where they were able to trap the ball inside their forward 50 so often compared to us. Again, just over half of our season average. They exceeded theirs by 4. 17-7. Not good enough. Frustrating. Very, very frustrating. But as I said, and as I've been saying in recent weeks, it's an opportunity to turn things around, to work out deficiencies. And again, I'm pleading with the coaches. Switch it up. Use a corridor. Pleading with the players. Show a bit more heart, intensity at the ball. 4-quarter effort. You can't just get away with kicking 7 goals in the second quarter and just thinking that it's going to continue working. It's a combination across the board. It's just not good enough, unfortunately. So, we'll leave things there. But we'll obviously reassess things and delve deeper into this. And hopefully we can respond because we need to. And what a time to do it against our arch rivals. What a time. Because I can't imagine what it's going to be like if we lose to them. And I'm awfully scared, must admit. It's happened 3 times now. Another team, backs against the wall. But we just have to think. We're now in that spot. We need to win. We need to win in order to maintain our spot for the top 2, top 4, but also the top 8. Such is the closeness of the competition this season. We can't afford to be dropping games like this. And I know Port aren't anything to be sneezed at. They're not a minnow team. But we need to bank as many wins as we can because I fear that even if we finish in the top 4, if we don't get that home final, we saw how hard it was last season against Brisbane, the Fortress. And I know we beat them there, albeit by coming back from 50-odd points down in round 0 to beat them there. If we have to play the Lions at the Gabba again, geez, I fear for us. But, yep, we'll take it. We'll have to reverse this trend. And, I know there's other teams that are going through it. Sydney as well. They've dropped a few games. Essendon, Geelong, across the board. I think Brisbane are probably the most informed team. Hawthorn obviously as well, who we face, mind you, in a few weeks' time. But yeah, we have to go back to the drawing board. We need to work on things. Look at what Collingwood did. Late last year, they lost 3 of their last 4 games or something, and they needed to arrest the slide, and they were able to do it. So it really does come down to the question of our players. Are the players good enough? Do they want the hunt? Do they have the hunger to win it? Our coaching staff, do we have the coaching nous, the tactical nous, the intellect to outcoach the opposition coach on match day, to have a plan B, to switch things up in season like we did last year and benefit from it? So the ball's in their court. They need to respond. We need to respond. So as a collective, let's do it. Let's get behind the Baggers. It's frustrating, I know, but we can do it. We did it last year, we saw, provided that everyone's on board, on the same page, coaches, players, everything. Let's do it. Let's bounce back. Let's beat the Pies, and let's secure that top 2 spot. Let's do it. Baggers, thanks for tuning in as always. Let me know your thoughts down below. Feel free to vent. Feel free to let me know your thoughts structurally, the way that we played as a whole, selection, the players, everything else. We need to hold ourselves to a higher standard from week to week, and love to hear your thoughts. But until next time, Baggers, we'll see you then, and go Baggers. Cheers.